Have you ever noticed something strange? Two people can earn the same salary, save the same amount of money, make equally responsible financial decisions, and 20 years later, one is financially free. The other still feels trapped. The weird part, neither of them necessarily made a bad decision, because the biggest financial decision most people ever make isn't choosing a stock, isn't starting a business, isn't even deciding how much to save. It's deciding where they sleep at night.
Let's meet two people, not because they're special, but because they're almost identical. Daniel is 31. Emma is also 31. Both earn $85,000 a year. Both spent nearly a decade living below their means, skipping expensive vacations, driving reliable used cars, ignoring every advertisement convincing them they deserve something nicer. Eventually, both reach the same milestone, $100,000 in savings. Same income, same savings, same city, same opportunities. From the outside, their financial future looks identical. It won't stay that way for long.
Daniel walks into a real estate office. Emma renews her apartment lease. That's it. One signature, two completely different financial lives begin. Not because houses magically create wealth, and not because renting is secretly cheaper, because every housing decision quietly changes dozens of financial decisions that follow. Most people only notice the monthly payment. Almost nobody notices the invisible chain reaction. That's what we're going to uncover. Daniel finds a house listed for $420,000. Nothing extraordinary, 3 bedrooms, small backyard, enough garage space to eventually fill with things he'd promised himself he'd use someday.
To buy it, he puts down 20%. That's $84,000 immediately gone. But something catches almost every first-time buyer by surprise. Buying the house isn't actually the expensive part. Buying permission to own the house is. Lenders, lawyers, title work, inspections, taxes, insurance, processing fees, appraisals, document fees. Suddenly, thousands of dollars disappear before Daniel has even received the keys. People prepare for the down payment. Far fewer prepare for everything wrapped around it. Money leaves your account before you've lived there a single day. Emma's experience looks completely different. She signs one lease, pays a security deposit, moves in the following weekend.
No inspections, no mortgage paperwork, no lender approval, no stack of documents thick enough to qualify as furniture. Within days, life simply continues. That simplicity has value, not emotional value, financial value. Because every dollar that never had to leave her savings account can keep working somewhere else. And that's the first hidden mechanism almost nobody compares. Buying doesn't just cost money. It locks money into one asset. Renting doesn't automatically build wealth, but it keeps capital flexible. Those aren't opinions. They're entirely different financial systems. Now here's where most comparisons immediately go wrong. Someone says, rent is throwing money away. It sounds reasonable until you ask a simple question. Compared to what? Imagine Daniel makes his first mortgage payment.
Part of it reduces his loan. That part builds ownership, but another part pays interest. Another portion covers taxes, insurance, maintenance, future repairs. Those dollars never come back. They're the cost of having a place to live, exactly like rent is. One payment contains ownership and expenses. The other contains only expenses. But neither payment is 100% wealth creation. That's the first illusion people rarely separate. Housing has two completely different costs hiding inside one monthly payment. The cost of living somewhere and the cost of owning something. Those are not the same thing, yet people constantly combine them into one number.
Now, imagine something else. The air conditioner dies, right in the middle of July. Daniel owns it. Emma doesn't. Same broken machine, unity. Ownership also creates responsibility. They always arrive together. Every financial asset comes with invisible obligations attached. Stocks fluctuate. Businesses demand time. Rental properties need tenants. Homes need repairs. Nothing produces wealth for free. Every asset asks for something in return. Sometimes money, sometimes time. Usually both. And this is where almost every online debate falls apart. People argue about returns. Very few argue about behavior, because numbers don't make financial decisions. Humans do. One person sleeps better knowing nobody can force them to move. Another sleeps better knowing they could relocate next month without selling anything. Neither preference appears inside a spreadsheet, yet both dramatically affect whether someone sticks with their financial plan.
Money follows behavior far more often than behavior follows money. That's why two people can start with identical finances, make rational decisions, and still end up with completely different outcomes. The house isn't changing the person. The person changes what the house means. 10 years pass faster than people expect. Not because life moves quickly, because financial habits become invisible. You stop noticing them, until one day you look back and realize they quietly built your future, or quietly limited it. Daniel's mortgage payment hasn't changed much. His lender still wants the same payment every month. That predictability feels comforting. Inflation keeps making groceries more expensive. Restaurants cost more. Insurance costs more. But one major part of his housing payment barely moves. Every year, inflation quietly makes that fixed payment feel a little smaller relative to his salary. He doesn't notice it month to month. He notices it decade to decade. That's one of borrowing's strangest features. Inflation hurts savers holding cash.
But fixed-rate debt behaves differently. If your income rises over time, yesterday's payment slowly becomes today's smaller burden. The payment didn't shrink, your earning power grew around it. Emma experiences time differently. Her apartment hasn't changed much. The neighborhood looks familiar. The coffee shop downstairs still charges too much. But her lease renewal looks different every year. Not dramatically, just enough. A little higher, then another little higher, then another. One increase feels harmless. 10 increases create a completely different monthly budget. Nothing about the apartment improved, yet living there became far more expensive. This isn't anyone cheating the system. It's simply how housing markets usually work over long periods. Costs rarely explode overnight. They compound quietly. Compounding. Everyone talks about investment returns. Far fewer people recognize that expenses compound too. A 3% annual increase sounds tiny, almost forgettable.
Until you realize you're multiplying that increase every single year. Small percentages become surprisingly large when time joins the conversation. Time never argues. Time simply keeps multiplying. Meanwhile, Emma's investment account has become something interesting. The first few years were exciting. Everything seemed easy. Then the market fell. Hard. News headlines became terrifying overnight. Experts suddenly appeared everywhere, explaining why this crash was completely different. Friends stopped talking about investing. Some started selling. Others promised they'd buy back when things looked safer, which almost always means after prices recover. Emma stares at her account. Months of gains disappear. Years of discipline suddenly feel pointless. This is the moment spreadsheets never capture. Not because spreadsheets are wrong, because spreadsheets don't panic. People do.
Imagine opening your investment account one morning and discovering you've lost the equivalent of an entire year's salary. Nothing physically disappeared. No money left your bank account. No one stole anything. But emotionally, it feels exactly the same. That's the psychological price of investing. Volatility. A simple word for an uncomfortable experience. Prices move, sometimes violently. The reward investors expect exists largely because uncertainty exists first. Without uncertainty, there would be far less reward. Daniel experiences a different kind of stress. One weekend, a heavy storm rolls through town. By Monday morning, water has found its way into the basement. Nobody sends a maintenance crew. Nobody answers a support ticket. The house quietly waits for its owner. Homeownership doesn't ask permission before creating expenses. It simply creates them. Sometimes they're expected, sometimes they're not. The roof doesn't care about your vacation plans. The furnace doesn't check your emergency fund before breaking. Owning an asset means accepting uncertainty of another kind. Less market volatility, more real-world responsibility.
Here's something fascinating.
Daniel worries about repair costs. Emma worries about market crashes. Different fears, same underlying question. What if I made the wrong decision? Most financial debates pretend only one side experiences uncertainty. Reality is messier. Every strategy comes with anxiety. You simply choose which anxiety you prefer living with. Some people would rather tolerate unpredictable repair bills. Others would rather tolerate unpredictable markets. Neither choice eliminates risk. It only changes its shape. Now another opportunity appears. A fast-growing company offers both of them promotions, double-digit salary increases, better career trajectory. One condition: they have to move 800 miles away. Emma's decision is surprisingly simple. She gives notice, packs her furniture, books a moving truck, starts a new chapter. Daniel faces a much longer checklist. Sell the house, rent it out, hire a property manager, wait for the market, hope buyers appear quickly. Every option carries costs. Every option creates uncertainty. A home doesn't just provide stability, it also reduces flexibility. That's not necessarily bad, but flexibility has value, sometimes enormous value, especially when careers change faster than mortgages disappear.
People often compare buying and renting using only one question: which one makes more money? The better question is different: which one gives you the kind of life you're actually trying to build? Because maximizing wealth and maximizing freedom are not always the same objective. Sometimes they overlap, sometimes they compete. Understanding that difference changes almost every financial decision you'll ever make. 20 years have passed. Daniel and Emma are no longer making monthly decisions. They're living with 20 years of consequences. And this is where almost every online argument breaks down, because people start comparing two numbers instead of two lives. Daniel owns a home that's worth far more than when he bought it. His mortgage balance has shrunk year after year. Every payment quietly transferred another tiny piece of ownership from the bank to him. He walks through the front door knowing nobody can raise his rent. Nobody can decide not to renew his lease. Nobody can sell the building out from under him. That certainty has value, not because it shows up in a net worth calculator, because uncertainty has a cost too. Some people are willing to pay for stability. Others aren't. Emma's investment account has grown into something remarkable. Years of disciplined investing, years of reinvesting, years of refusing to panic, eventually turned into an asset capable of producing meaningful wealth. But notice something important. That outcome wasn't created by renting. It was created by investing. Those are completely different actions. Renting simply created the opportunity. Discipline turned the opportunity into wealth. Without that discipline, the entire comparison changes. Imagine a different version of Emma. Every month she tells herself, "I'll invest next month." Next month becomes next year. The extra cash quietly disappears into restaurants, weekend trips,
New electronics, a slightly nicer car, lifestyle upgrades that never feel expensive individually. 20 years later, she didn't lose because she rented. She lost because she consumed the difference instead of compounding it. That's the invisible assumption hiding inside almost every rent versus buy calculation. Behavior, not math. Now imagine a different version of Daniel. 3 years after buying, his company transfers him across the country. He has to sell quickly. Selling costs, agent commissions, legal fees, moving expenses, years where most mortgage payments mostly covered interest rather than principal. Suddenly, owning the home doesn't look nearly as profitable. Not because buying was wrong, because time never had the chance to do its job. Real estate often rewards patience. It often punishes impatience. The investment wasn't the house. The investment was staying.
This reveals something almost nobody talks about. Buying a house is partly a financial decision, but it's also a bet. A bet that your life won't change dramatically, that your career stays nearby, that your family doesn't outgrow the space too quickly, that the neighborhood remains desirable, that you actually want the same lifestyle years from now. Sometimes those bets pay off beautifully. Sometimes life rewrites the plan. Investing carries a different bet, not on one neighborhood,
not on one property, but on businesses, innovation, economic growth, human productivity over decades, thousands of companies, countless industries, entire economies adapting over time. Different bet, different risks, different rewards. So, who actually wins? The homeowner or the renter? It's the wrong question. The better question is this:
Which system gives you the highest probability of staying disciplined for the next 20 years? Because extraordinary wealth rarely comes from finding the perfect strategy. It comes from following a good strategy for an extraordinarily long time. The spreadsheet rewards consistency. Life constantly tries to interrupt it. Here's something worth remembering. Housing is never free. Owners pay with interest, taxes, insurance, maintenance, repairs, opportunity cost. Renters pay with rent, future rent increases, and the responsibility of investing instead of spending. Everyone pays. They just pay differently. If you're planning to stay somewhere for many years, want stability, and are comfortable tying a large part of your wealth to one property, buying can be an incredibly powerful long-term decision. If flexibility matters more,
Your career may change, or you're committed enough to invest consistently regardless of market conditions. Renting can produce outstanding financial results too. Neither path guarantees wealth. Neither path guarantees failure. Your habits determine far more than your housing choice ever will. Here's the lesson most people completely miss. Money isn't built by one spectacular decision. It's built by hundreds of ordinary decisions that nobody applauds. The mortgage payment made on time. The monthly investment that happened even during a market crash. The repair fund you built before the roof leaked. The impulse purchase you quietly skipped. Financial freedom doesn't usually arrive dramatically. It arrives so gradually that most people don't realize they've become wealthy until one ordinary afternoon when they suddenly notice something extraordinary. They no longer make decisions because they need money. They make decisions because they have choices. And in the end, that was never really a story about buying versus renting.
It was always a story about understanding trade-offs, choosing the ones that fit your life, and then having the discipline to stay with them long enough for time to become your greatest financial advantage. If this video changed the way you think about money, subscribe for more breakdowns of the hidden mechanics behind everyday financial decisions. And tell me in the comments, if you had to choose today, would you buy, rent, or wait? And what's the biggest reason behind your choice?